Hey there, and welcome into another episode of Subscription Web Design. Hope this finds you doing very, very well on this fine day in June 2024. If you are listening in real time, and if not, hey there in the future. Nice to see you. On this episode, I thought we would do something fun. I've had a few requests over the years to basically go into the full process, what it looks like from essentially the client saying yes to a proposal to actually going into delivery. Okay. So what does that whole entire process look like? So we're going to cover everything from the discovery call to the writing of the case study that we do after the project is done. Now, we're not going to go in extreme depth or anything. I'll talk maybe a little bit about each step, but there's a lot of steps. Okay. So I don't want to take all of your day. So we're just going to move through this, and hopefully it's something that you'll find useful and helpful in your business. So this is a little bit about how the sausage is made here inside of our companies. All right. So first things first is we typically have a discovery call. So at this point, the client has read some blog posts or have seen us on social media, or they've been exposed to us through a referral of some sort. Some way or another, the client has found us and has filled out a contact form, requested that we have a conversation. And that's where the discovery call comes in. And this usually lasts 20 to 30 minutes. Really nothing spectacular about this here. The biggest thing for me on a discovery call is that I'm not doing much of the talking at all. Okay. We let the client do the talking because the client, more than anything else during that discovery call, needs to feel heard. They need to feel that someone has listened to them and heard their concerns. Okay. I was on a discovery call just yesterday, and I did very little of the talking. I did just enough talking to assure the person on the other end that I knew what I was talking about, and that I was the right partner for the job. And most of it was just hearing what she had to say, her explaining the current challenges and struggles that they're facing in their business, and then me responding to those things before moving on to the next question that I have. So it's all about gathering information. And from a sales perspective, what you're really doing is listening for the things that matter to them, so that if you do present a proposal or something like that in the future with them, you know exactly the pain points that they have, and your proposal can very specifically address those pain points. Okay. So that's the discovery call. We always start with that. And again, I think my best advice on a discovery call would be to go on YouTube and look up the Dan Sullivan question. The Dan Sullivan question. And the Dan Sullivan question goes like this. They also call it the R factor question. But it goes like this. You're talking with somebody and they say, well, hey, tell me a little bit about your business. How can you help me? And you just simply say, well, let me ask you this question, this one question, if it's okay with you. And it's like, if we were to work together, let's say that we're 3 years down the road in the future, we've started working together, and you're looking back on the experience of our last 3 years together working in your business and helping you with your marketing or just whatever it is that you're doing, right? And we're looking back over the experience of our last 3 years. You tell me what would have to happen in your life, both personally and professionally, for it to feel like the work that we've done together was successful. And stop there and be quiet. Let them talk. And they will oftentimes talk for 10, 15, 20 minutes about themselves, because that's what most people want to talk about. And just let them talk. Let them talk. You respond as necessary, but for the most part, you're just going to let them talk, and you can ask clarifying questions after that. But that's a good starting point. Now, I don't get to do that in every discovery call. I didn't do it in yesterday's, but I do that in a lot of discovery calls, and I find that it is a useful tactic to get the other side talking. Okay, so after the discovery call, the next phase that we often move into, and not always, but often, is paid discovery. Now, paid discovery is a great tool underutilized by web designers, okay? With paid discovery, you get the opportunity to get paid upfront for work that you almost certainly have to do anyway, okay? It's very hard to give a proposal for a project that you haven't done a sufficient amount of discovery on to know what the project is going to need. Now, you might wonder how that works in the context of subscription web design, because doesn't everything I do fit within, certain packages within a design subscription? Well, not necessarily, okay? We are currently testing packages being listed on our website, and I have nowhere near enough data to be able to, speak to that, how that has gone yet. But I do know this. I do know that even through all the years that I've done subscription-based web design, I've had a price in mind that I typically start with, but beyond that, it requires discovery to come up with accurate pricing, because not everybody over the years has paid the same amount. There are some websites that are just more difficult than others, and we still treat it like a custom build. So even determining the setup fee and determining the monthly fee has always been case by case in my business, because we're doing custom website design. We haven't done like a template-based model for most of the time that I've been doing this, okay? So paid discovery, even in subscription web design, if you're doing customs, can be extremely helpful. And that's just a one-time fee. Could be $300, could be $500, could be more than that, depending on the context, okay? But we'll do that paid discovery up front to see what the project needs. And then after that, then we move into a more long-term arrangement. The deal with the client that we are beginning to work with now is they are probably going to need a custom retainer option for the amount of time that we work together, which could be 6 months, could be a year, could be longer, okay? It's going to be a custom retainer, probably based on a certain amount of work per month, and that's going to largely depend on what I find in discovery. So we're starting with discovery first, and I like to get paid for discovery. I think you can do a better job when you get paid for discovery. You can take more time, you can do it more accurately, and most of all, you can feel good about doing it. Right? You feel good that you're not doing free work. So paid discovery is a great way to go. Kyle Van Dusen over at the Admin Bar has written a lot about this and talked about this, I believe, on his YouTube channel as well. Worth checking out. He has a lot of really amazing thoughts on paid discovery that I think will flip that switch for you and get you thinking a little bit differently. Okay, next up, contract is sent for signature. So I've got a fairly standard contract template. I adjust the details of it to make it make sense for that client. And then I send it into Signaturely, which is an e-signature platform that I got on AppSumo a couple years ago. And we use e-signatures for that. I upload the PDF to that. It goes off. And then we wait for the client to sign it. Okay, I don't do anything in terms of a long-term agreement without that contract. We'll do paid discovery without a contract. That's much more of a sensible handshake sort of deal. But then after that, everything else happens in the context of a contract, always. Very, very important to have. And we use Signaturely as our e-signature platform to get that done. Okay, once that signature comes in, and I want to be clear about this because I've been asked about this very recently. For us, we do not start doing any work at all on the project until after the contract is signed. That's a big deal for us, and others that I've talked to do this differently, and that's fine, but you need to know, as far as I'm concerned, we always wait to start work until after the contract gets in. I'll tell you why. Because I have done it once or twice where we didn't do that, and I have regretted it, okay? I've regretted it because I got paid later. It was just a mess. So we don't start until the contract is signed and in fact, until the next step is done. Okay, on the next step, we create their payment accounts and their project management accounts, okay? Meaning we'll go ahead and send off their first invoice, and that first invoice is going to be for the first monthly payment, and then also if there are any setup fees that apply, the setup fee as well. Okay. That's what that first invoice is going to be for. And then we'll set up project management accounts. So we'll go into Basecamp and we'll actually go in and add them as a client in there. Then the next step is to actually create the project within Basecamp, make sure that the project is linked up with the client and all of that. So we get the payment situated, and then we start to get the project management situated. Okay. The next step after the project is created, all that's taken care of, and this is, of course, after they've paid and signed, then I'm going to write a project overview. Now, this is a pivotal point in our team and the way that we work, because once I write a project overview, that is essentially the internal handoff with my team. Okay, so that is where the reins get tossed over to Brian, and who is my project manager, and then the rest of my team. Now, I trust them at this point. Of course, I'm monitoring the process all along, but I trust them at this point, after I write this project overview, to essentially manage the project from here. So what does the project overview look like? Well, it looks like essentially me summarizing the details of any discovery or conversations that have been done up to this point. Now, depending on the nature of the discovery, usually if we do paid discovery, my designer, Hime, is going to be involved in that process as well. Okay, so at that point, she will have some knowledge of the project, not only knowledge of the project, but she'll have created a video asset, typically like a walkthrough format, with her thoughts or ideas within the discovery. And then I'll take that and provide a written version of that. So all of that goes into the project overview. Any other additional thoughts I have, I'll mention the timing, the launch dates that I think that the project needs to go live, and all of that within the project overview as well. My entire team can see the project overview. And at that point, it's Brian's job to manage the project throughout and make sure that everything is okay. So there's little details in between here and there, but everything that we're going to talk about now is the major steps in the process that Brian and my team follow to actually bring it through to completion. So again, I write the overview, and then, being very tactical here, I assign Brian a task to, number one, send the client a questionnaire, and number two, to assign the rest of the tasks for the project. Okay, so our template already has the due dates from the dynamic starting point in it. So it's like, 2 weeks from the start date, this is due. 3 weeks on Tuesday from the start date, this is due. So that's all built in with Basecamp, which I highly recommend. Okay, so I'll assign Brian the task to assign the rest of a task and the questionnaire. So Brian will get a questionnaire filled out by the client that will help to bolster the details within the project overview that I've already given them. And we essentially use that as a checks and balances type thing. I can't tell you the amount of times that especially with working with white label clients, so we had to nail this down as well, where there was like a mismatch, a miscommunication between what I thought and what the client thought. And sometimes that even existed at multiple layers beyond that. So we wanted to clear that up. And one way that we've really cleared that up is by not only getting my initial thoughts on the project, but also the client's initial thoughts on the project, and make sure that everything was in sync. And that questionnaire really helps that. So we often tell them at that point that, hey, look, this questionnaire might have a few pieces of information in it that seem a little bit redundant. You might have talked through some of these things before. That's okay. It's on purpose. We want to measure twice, cut once, make sure everything gets done in the way that fits your expectations and ours. So that's very important to get that questionnaire done and in that process. So after we receive the questionnaire, this is the longest stretch in the project management process, okay? Because what happens here is usually a few weeks of silence. I mean, this process for us takes 6 to 8 weeks total. And so this next step is where the homepage is getting designed. Because without the homepage and header footer, the rest of the project is on pause, right? You sort of have to have that in order to move much further. At least that's the way that we do it. Now, sometimes there are, not sometimes, actually most of the time, there are some other tasks that can be done in the background while the homepage is being built. It's just that those things are not necessarily things that you report to the client on. We'll get the the actual installation for WordPress set up. Okay, usually my I call him my builder, Sam. He will go in and do that. Okay, so Sam will go in and make sure that WordPress is set up, get all of our standard plugins installed, do the standard WordPress cleanup type of stuff that you got to do. Remove the widgets and make sure that search engines are not indexing the site while it's being built. Basic things like that Sam is taking care of while the homepage is being built. And so we actually inform our clients, hey, look, just so you know, these next couple of weeks might be a little bit more dead space. There's not going to be as much to update you on. Now, that said, we do update them, though. We update them every week, once a week, by Friday during an active build. Okay, that's what I have my project manager, Brian, do, even if it's what we call a no update, just to make sure that the client knows that the trains are still running on time, work is being done, and that's all good. And that gives us typically 2 to max 3 weeks to actually get a homepage delivered for the client's approval. Once we have that approval, then we go in and start work on the rest of the pages. Again, you guys know that most web pages are not very difficult to build. Mostly you're just getting the approval from the client on the branding and design and basic layout ideas. And so from there, it's fairly easy to build the additional pages, and we just build those and sort of get those approved in fairly regular update cadences after that. I would say once every few days, we typically have an update on the client with another page or another set of pages that are done. Okay, somewhat during that time, but also depending on the complexity of the site, it could go a little bit after that. That's also when on the other end, we're working on like the functionality that the website is supposed to have and things of that nature. A lot of times we do websites that are not your standard brochure. And so there might be membership functionality or courses or e-commerce or complex forms, other things that are not directly relevant to, say, the actual design and branding of the website or even the copywriting, but that are part of the functionality and what the site is supposed to do. So we'll be working on those things sort of concurrently, and both the functionality and design updates will usually get lumped in together that Brian will do. In terms of copywriting, we typically have the client write the copy, and we just sort of give them guidance on how to do that and send them a list of the kind of content that we need. We will offer copywriting services if needed. We have a copywriter on staff, and she does a great job, but she usually works on like blogs and things of that nature. She doesn't typically write the copy for our websites, but if that's ever needed, we can absolutely do that as well. Okay, next up, after we get all of that done and everything is approved and we're happy, that's going to take quite a few weeks for that to get sorted out. Then we're finally to the point of starting some finalization stuff. So we will hook up the domain, okay, and actually get the website launched and out there. Not officially launched in the client sense, but we'll get it up on the domain, right? The client, it's of course their prerogative when they're ready to share it with their audience and actually get it launched from there. But we'll get the domain hooked up, because until you get the domain hooked up, there's a lot of other things that could go wrong. Things that you just don't know, or things that you can't even configure yet. So once the domain is hooked up and the website is live, it's out there, then we'll do spam protection, right? We'll check out Clean Talk or CAPTCHA or whatever we need to make sure that the website is not sending tons of spam submissions. And then we'll do final checks, just making sure the email is hooked up right, all the forms are working properly, and notifications are being delivered properly. Security is installed and ready to go. Plugins are all up to date and ready to go. And we've got things shored up for the management phase that we head into next. And so once that's done, we will get the build sign off from the client. And this is the client's signification to us that they are happy with the project. It's done. It's complete as far as they're concerned. And so that immediately ends the process of having those extra hours for build time. Okay, so once they sign that off, they realize that they are going down to a scenario where they get 1 hour per month of work through the remainder of that initial 18-month agreement. And then we move into that ongoing management phase where we take care of the website from there. And then in the weeks following the launch of the website, we write a case study. So we'll actually have a case study written of the initial problem that the client reached out to us for, some of the challenges that they were having, and then how we help them solve those challenges with the website. And once the case study is written, we can use that as material to share on social media, etc. That's actually just a new part of the process, though, that we're just now starting to implement. So again, I don't have much to report on that, but I am excited about it. So that's everything from the discovery call through the delivery, even to the case study being written of how we handle a project. We're already at 20 minutes, so I'm going to skip any additional pleasantries here and close it out for now, but I hope this was helpful. If you have more specific questions about it, please feel free to shoot me an email. steve@northmaxservices.com is still the best email address, although I'm working on some things with that and hopefully getting it changed. But I appreciate you being a listener and checking this out. We'll see you next time.